Welcome to CRECast, the CRE Network podcast that features top thought leaders in commercial real estate, shares important industry insight, and inspires change.
Welcome to our CRECast industry series, which examines trends, hot topics, and disruptors across the major sectors of commercial real estate. Today, we are discussing the industrial sector with Mark Duclos, president of Sentry Commercial and 2020 president of SIOR, the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. Welcome, Mark.
Good morning, Wendy, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about industrial. It is one of my favorite asset classes, and there's a lot going on with industrial. But before that, we have to think about this whole pandemic. We're in this global health crisis right now, and while recovery appears to be on the horizon, there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. Commercial real estate has definitely been affected, and we've seen a downturn across the industry. However, there are sectors that are doing extremely well, industrial being one of them. Can you talk about the drivers that continue to make industrial the number one asset class? And do you see demand increasing even more as we go forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I would describe the industrial market necessarily. I guess I would call it resilient. There's no question industrial has had the crisis has had an effect on industrial real estate, but there also have been winners in the industrial real estate spectrum, and just as much as there's also been losers, unfortunately, and probably more people have been negatively affected. But I think the thing with the industrial world is when the winners that are winning have done so because they're behemoths already in the marketplace. And obviously the biggest one would be e-commerce. They're kind of the poster child for expansion. And of course, when e-commerce expands, they don't expand by a couple of square feet. They expand by hundreds of thousands of square feet and by millions of square feet. So we've seen the e-commerce sector just explode. We don't think that's going to be a short-term type of effect like some of the corona effect as the coronavirus effect has occurred. We think it's a long-term lasting. And when you look at e-commerce and you look at things like pharma and biotech and data centers and medical equipment, those kind of sectors are doing well. Equally, the commercial aerospace markets, gas and oil markets, gaming, automotive, and there's a whole bunch of others that are not doing well. So I think the net effect is you're going to start seeing a lot more development of big boxes, but the equal effect is you're going to see probably a retrenchment, at least temporarily, of the companies that haven't done well.
That's a great. It kind of weighs each other out. There's some things that aren't doing well, and there's some that are booming and will continue. And as part of that, do you see more of the urban development of industrial happening?
Yeah, I don't think that changes that dynamic because, again, that e-commerce type of product is growing. I think I heard a number that they're doing 30% more. Amazon is doing 30% more than they were doing at the peak of the holiday season last year. So that gives you a little idea of what they're doing on a regular basis. And there's plenty of other companies that are mirroring that. So the demand, the demographics of the ages of people that have demands now on e-commerce are changing. And, your older population is using e-commerce a lot more for a lot of different type of products. So if the theory is that e-commerce wants to get the product in the hands of their customers faster and faster, well, then certainly the urban won't change. That'll actually potentially even increase.
Well, moving on, let's talk about, again, in this pandemic, safety is top of mind for everyone. So what do you see as some of perhaps the most significant changes for industrial tenants and property managers implementing to keep their employees safe at work?
The overriding theme to me is it's about employee wellness, right? So it's not, you can come up with all the ideas that you want. You can make all the changes that you want in your facilities. You can do that, and you can think you've done everything right. And guess what? If the employees are uncomfortable, they're going to let you know. And that means you're going to have to continue to evolve your plant or your offices to accommodate that comfort level. So, I think we have a lot of clients that are looking for guidance on those type of items. We're starting to, as a company, start to provide that kind of guidance on our website to say, hey, listen, this is what we're seeing. Some of those things, the easiest is sanitize, more stations and those kind of things. Those are the easy ones. Communicate, right? So you cannot communicate enough with your employees, with your visitors, with your clients that come into your office. You need to make sure that you're communicating with them. Things that we're starting to see now, and actually innovative things. There was an article actually just today in the Wall Street Journal about, it was specific, I believe, to New York City, but it was about things like type of devices that take employee temperatures, thermal cameras, those kind of things like that, implementing multiple shifts. So you might be a one-shift operation, but you know what? You might have to turn your operation into a two-shift operation. You might have to have employees come in, half your employees come in at one time and half the employees come in at another time. You might see things like the total elimination of lunchrooms and, going to paper cups and paper plates and those kind of things, conference rooms being eliminated in the office areas. A lot of the innovation, I would say, from a technology standpoint, anything that's auto entry, right? Whether it's voice activated, app activated, those kind of things. I'm still trying to figure out how they're going to make the elevator COVID safe. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Change in areas, how your flow of traffic and those kind of things. The one actually low tech change that I heard just the other day was, so in the manufacturing area, there's a lot of computer driven type of machinery now, right? And what we just heard was wrapping saran wrap on the keyboards. So if I'm a first shift employee, and I know that I'm turning it over to a second shift employee to have saran wrap over your keyboard so that you're actually typing on saran wrap. And then, by the way, you unwrap that saran wrap, you throw it away, second shift employee comes in. So very innovative. That's not high tech, that's low tech, but very innovative type. That's very innovative, and it probably works. I'm also just, and I'll end it here with that question, but we were on a very good call just a couple of days ago with the sanitizing side and all the different type of high-tech things that are being used on the sanitizing side. The real question is going to be, are they effective? The janitorial service that we were talking to that does an awful lot of work up in the Northeast was like, you know what, we're telling our clients we're doing it, but we're not sure just if this is 100% effective. I'm sure it's not. So it's a lot of trial and error.
I want to ask you a crystal ball question, but it seems so far off, like talking about innovations now. But if you had a crystal ball, I mean, what do you expect innovation to be like in 5 to 10 years in the industrial market? Is there anything you could say that you would say, wow, it builds itself and it populates inside with whatever the customer needs? I don't know, George Jetson, what would we ever think that we were doing the George Jetson thing and talking to people on a video camera on our desk? So here we are doing that after, when was George Jetson, Mark? Was that in the 60s?
Oh, man,
70s?
I think it was 70s. So might be dating myself. And we were definitely dating ourselves, so thank you very much.
For all you young folks out there, that was a reference to a cartoon show where it was supposed to be very much out in the future. And so as I think about the crystal ball into our future, I mean, I can't imagine what might change in industrial. It seems like such a basic product in some ways, but...
I think crisis creates opportunity. I think that, when I look at just our own company, when I look at some of our manufacturers, some of my clients, and they're like, hey, we should have been doing these things a long time ago, and we're shame on us. And now we're doing it because we've been forced to do it. I think there's other technologies in what we do, as well as our manufacturers, that is accelerating technology that they already had in play. So they might have been trying to implement technology in their operations now, and maybe for next year, or maybe for 2 years from now, but they're implementing that immediately because they need to. And that will only create opportunity. I was on a call yesterday morning, and the idea came up that, there's only certain jobs can be done remotely, meaning, this idea that people are going to be working at home, and the idea, only people who can work at home can need the technology. They're not actually making something. And of course, I brought up the question, what about a 3D printer? there's an idea that maybe you're going to have a handful of 3D printers sitting at your house manufacturing some products. I do think you're going to start seeing that coming around at a much quicker pace. I think again the replacement, unfortunately, of the person on the floor with technology is going to accelerate. So I think you're going to see less and less people needed on those manufacturing floors because the idea of automation of the machinery is going to accelerate. And I think those are natural byproducts of crisis.
Absolutely. And I did see on a newscast that there was a young boy who is probably a teenager making some of the masks for protective masks. And he was making it at home on a 3D printer and putting them together. And I thought, wow, who would have thought? So you're right. I hadn't, that's an acceleration or an opportunity there. Well, let's move on to the business environment. Let's be honest, this has been a really tough time for folks, everyone. But for us in the real estate industry, we make deals by building relationships, especially in person. We love to meet people. We love to have that, face-to-face time. So most of us have been spending a significant time, advising customers and clients on navigating this change and challenges while social distancing and working from home. There's not a lot of FaceTime happening except on Zoom. So what's your advice on how we can conduct business now? How do we find new business deals and partners while staying apart?
Great question. I think that a couple things. I tell people I've never been busier being so slow, right? And and the reason that you're so busy is because I believe it's our job right now to stay in front of our clients. And I don't mean just physically or even on Zoom. I mean one step ahead of them, right? So that we can inform our clients of things that they need to be aware of as we move through this crisis and that we emerge from this crisis. So, we've been doing just a ton of reading. We've been doing a ton of calling. And we've been doing a lot of just providing them the resources necessary for them to make decisions. I can tell you we've never appreciated our tech stack, our technology stack, the way we've appreciated it during this crisis. I used to always say, we've got CRM and we've got our CoStar and we've got the type of data and things like that. Well, we then started, let's really look at our technology stack and use our technology stack in order to extract real data that can help our clients. But that takes time, all right? And what you also start doing there is you also start extracting data that not only helps your clients, but then it helps you identify potential future clients. People that are, give an example, a company that's here locally, a company that makes parachutes. Well, what can they do with parachutes? Guess what? They're making gowns for COVID. That might not be a short-term thing because manufacturers are going to start providing their people with more personal protection equipment, right? So the data that you start pulling out starts saying, those are companies we should be calling on. And not to sell them right now, but to start that relationship, provide them any kind of information they may need to grow. And that's all coming from the use of data. The other thing I think that we've seen that I think hopefully, and it certainly has helped us, has been I've never seen more collaboration in today's time. Just us talking at the length that we did even just prior to going to this podcast. It was significant and it was valuable and appreciated. So I think what we're seeing is an awful lot of collaboration between allied groups, between allied industries that are allowing us to be able to provide our clients with the resources they need, again, to make decisions. So those are all things I think you can get in front of with your clients or with your customers or with future clients, but it takes a lot of work and you need to be able to put in the time.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're so busy when it's slow, is because you're putting in the time. But I agree with you. I think that, information and data is going to win the day in this because it is going to give you new direction and new innovative ideas for clients and client relationships. But it's also, I'm a big data person. I think there's always something to learn in the data. You just have to sift through it. So I do think that you're spot on that. And this whole idea of collaboration, it started with was Google and Apple, and everybody was making a big deal of it. But it is rewarding to see that companies are looking for new and different partners that might have not been part of their framework in the past. So those are both good points, Mark.
And they were the people that were actually adversarial, right? Companies that were adversarial that are actually getting together for the better of the group. It's interesting. I could talk about this for hours, but I won't. But I think the crisis has, from a standpoint of being a service provider, has exposed our strengths and has exposed our weaknesses. And every time I go back and start looking at the things that we're doing that we think are actually extra, like digging into data that we've had at our fingertips forever, doing things like getting in touch with our client and letting them know about things that they should know about, those are all just best practices. We're actually just executing best practices. The problem is, and we think we're pretty good at what we do, you need to be better. And I think that's flushing this out.
Yeah, that's a great comment and a great perspective. I think that across the board, people will find that they'll be doing things that they started doing during this time period and letting go of things that perhaps were taking a lot of time in the past, but aren't going to be as useful going forward. So that is really great insight. So one final question I have for you. You are currently serving as president of SIOR, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation. And we had the pleasure of hosting you and your colleague at last year's CRE Network convention in Orlando. SIOR is also an underwriter of the 2020 CRE Network benchmark study, it's going to provide critical and insightful data, speaking of data, for the entire industry on progress for diversity and inclusion. Can you tell us why this partnership with the benchmark study and alignment with CRE is so important to you and to SIOR?
Absolutely. Listen, number one, thank you for the invite again. Robert Thornburg, our past president, and I had a wonderful time there. Our first reaction and our first probably half hour to hour when we were at the conference was just the energy that your members have. It was just really refreshing to see. So we enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. So we're enjoying this relationship with CRE, and it's important for a lot of reasons. But as it relates to diversity, listen, SIOR is known as a old white man's organization, right? We're getting old, we're very white, and we're very male. So the good news is if that's what you're looking for advice from, if your clients are looking for advice from somebody who's been in the business a long time, who's Caucasian and male, well, do we have advice for you? The problem is, right? So the problem is that's very myopic. It might be myopic advice. It might be advice that doesn't really come from hearing a lot of different opposing, or not even opposing, but just ideas that are coming from people who have come from different places. And, we've started this effort as an organization, and I think as well as an industry, to become more diverse, to also give us just more perspective. I think that is the benefit of diversity. It's not only having more diverse people employed in our industry, which is necessary, but you just get so many different ideas and so many different perspectives that allow you to become just a much better broker or service provider or whatever you do. The other thing is, if we want to, it's a thin hiring pool, right? So certainly SIOR, we're in the brokerage and advisory world. Well, guess what? We have a very thin hiring pool, and we need to broaden that pool. And so again, just from a selfish standpoint, we need to do that. I could tell you again from a different perspective, getting a different perspective at SIOR, our governance group is 40% of our governance group would be categorized as diverse. And I can't tell you as a president, the wealth and the depth of perspective that group has brought to me that has actually changed many ways how I will work through challenges. So why do we partner with CRE? Listen, bottom line is nobody knows diversity like CRE, right? I mean, you are out there trying to make the industry become diverse, and we're not the experts on it. We can't do it on our own. We need help, and certainly CRE is just a great organization to be able to get that help from.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. We very much recognize the value of what SIOR is doing and bringing more visibility to brokerage. And, I always say to people, it's not like kids grow up and go, wow, I want to be in commercial real estate. It's not like I want to be a doctor or I want to be a fireman. So it's something really that has to be learned, and forget brokerage. I mean, if someone figures out they like commercial real estate, brokerage may be way down the line in the aspect that they like. So I know that attracting more diverse individuals into commercial real estate overall and into the brokerage field is a challenge, and it's something that the entire industry, and that's kind of our goal, why we wanted everybody involved in the benchmark. The entire industry needs to be dedicated to that, to making that change. CRE can't do it alone, and we often say that we need to all sit at the table together and make sure that's happening. One thing that I just have, this is a question, but do you think that there will ever be a change in the commission structure, that it's strictly commission for brokers? Do you think that will ever change? And if it does, would that drive more diverse talent into the brokerage field?
I think that is absolutely one of the issues that are on the table right now. You have seen a change in compensation structure, but we're still predominantly a commission-based business. But we are seeing more teams out there. We're seeing more corporate work being done on a more salary or salary plus bonus type of basis. So you're right. Is that a hurdle for entry into our business? There's no question it is, but we are seeing that change, but it needs to change quicker, because that is one of the biggest hurdles.
Well, I want to say thank you for joining me here on the podcast today. Thank you to Robert Thornburg last year, who started this whole conversation between CRE and SIOR, and we really appreciate the partnership we have and working together and really changing the dynamic for the industry. So thank you. And again, industrial is the prom queen that we still see growing, and thanks for sharing your insight on it today.
Well, thanks for having me, Wendy, and thanks for all you do at CRE. And we, as I said, really appreciate the relationship. So thank you.